Hi friends, welcome to Taking Python series. In this video, we're going to talk about how to do automated testing in Python with unittest Python module. So Python's unit test module comes usually along with Python installation, so you don't need to install the module separately. Anyways, why do testing at all? Testing actually helps developer to find out the bugs before the user actually uses the code. And why use an automated testing framework? So testing frameworks like unit test can help developers run tests again and again with a convenient developer experience. So in this video, we're going to talk about how to use the test case class of the unit test module to run multiple tests. So let's see how to use this test case class. So here you can see I am defining a class test logic and it inherits from test case class. And let's talk about this method afterwards, but let's see the main methods, which is the test sum and test multiply. So the convention for writing tests inside a test case is the test should start with the word test. Okay, so these two are the testing methods, but this is not the testing method. So here you can see I'm just testing whether 1 plus 8 is 9 or not. And there is one more method, test multiply. It is testing multiplication of two numbers. So these are very simple tests to demonstrate using the unit test module. And there are two special methods in this test case class, which is the setup class and the teardown class. And as the name implies, the setup class runs before each test. So this class is called before running the test sum and before running the test multiply also. And the teardown class runs after each test is completed. So this teardown method will be called after running of this test sum and test multiply. So if there are any common tasks for all the tests inside a test case, you can use this setup and teardown methods. And if you want to run this test case class, you can just run this unittest.main. So let's get started with coding and let's try to implement this. I'm going to take a blank folder and I'm going to open it with VS Code. Let's try to create a new file. I'll just name it testlogic.py. And now let's try to create a test case. So first I'm going to import the unit test module, import unit test, and then I'm going to create a class for implementing the test case. So each test case will contain multiple tests inside it. So let's try to create a test case class. So I'm going to write class test logic, or you can write any name for this class. So it's going to inherit from unit test dot test case. And now let's try to write a test inside this test case. So I'm going to write a method inside this. So the name should start with a test. So I'm going to write def test addition and then write the tests inside this test method. So let's try to add two numbers. So I'm going to write result equal to 1 plus 8, and obviously it should be 9. So let's try to test that now. I'm going to write self.assert true. So what it does is that it will check if the supplied value is true or not. If it is not true, it's going to throw an error or it's going to fail the test. So assert true, result equal to 9. So obviously result will be 9 and this should be true. You can write multiple assertions like this. Let's try to write another assertion for the same test. I'm going to write self.assert equal result and 9. So I'm telling that these two values should be equal. So let's try to save this. All right, let's try to test this. I want to run this file. So I'm going to write if underscore underscore name underscore underscore equal to underscore underscore main underscore underscore. So what this does is it will check whether the script is running from this or is this script being called from another Python file. So if this is satisfied, that means we are running this script. So I'm going to write unittest.main. And now let's try to run this. Oh, sorry, I just forgot. The name is a special variable. So I'm going to write underscore underscore name equal to main. So let's try to save this and run this. And you can see one test ran in 0 seconds and the result is okay. So let's try to make this fail. Let's try to check if result is 8. So now my assertion is I'm telling that result should be equal to 8. And this test should fail because the result is actually 9. So let's go to save this and let's go to run this again. We got an assertion error and it is telling that 9 not equal to 8 and it has failed here, assert equal result equal to 8. So this way it's really simple to actually write tests in Python using the unit test model. So a test case can contain multiple tests. So let's try to create another test here. So I'm going to just copy this and let's try to paste this here again. And I'm going to change the method name because the method name inside a class should be unique. So I'm going to write test multiply and let's see 5 into 7, so it should be 35. So I'm going to write test result equal to 35. So let's try to remove this. So now I'm just testing whether result is 35. So let's try to save this and run this again, and now you can see two tests ran and there is a failure still. So let's try to make this correct I'm going to write result as 9. Let me save it and run this again, and you can see ran 2 tests. Okay. Alright, now we got our test case and we are running 2 tests inside a test case. And now let's talk about the special methods setup and tear down. So I'm going to write a special method called def setup. U is capital, and since it's an object method, you're going to write self, and this method will be called before each test is executed inside a test case. So any setup tasks or initialization tasks which are common for each test can be written here. So let me just write print test started, and let's try to copy this and create a teardown method also. So teardown method will be called after each test is executed. So any disposal tasks which are common to all tests can be written in this teardown task. So I'm going to just write test ended. Let's save this and run this again. And here you can see for each test we are telling test started, test ended, and again test started, test ended. Alright, this is how you can write a test case in Python using the unit test module, and each test case can contain multiple tests inside it. And inside each test you can write one or more assert statements to test your logic. Here I have used 2 types of asserts, which is assert true and assert equal. There are many other important assert statements which you can use, and in most of the cases I end up using assert true and assert false because everything can come under this. But if you want to be more expressive, you can have many other options like assert equal, assert not equal, assert is none, is not none, assert is not, assert in, assert not in, assert is instance, assert not is instance. So these are some important assert methods which you can use in your tests. Alright, that's about creating test cases. The next topic is running multiple test cases in multiple Python files inside a folder using test discovery. Let's see the use case. Here I've got one script, and in that there is a one test case which I'm running. But suppose if I create multiple test cases in multiple files. So let's try to create some multiple test cases. I'm going to just copy paste this again. Let's try to rename this file, and I've renamed it test services. So let's try to rename the class name here also. I'm going to write test services. So let's think that this is another test case. I'm not changing the test methods here, but for this example, let's suppose that there are 2 test cases inside this folder. And how can I run these 2 test cases at once? So you can use the test discovery technique of the unit test module. So the syntax is pretty simple. You gotta write python -m unit test discover, or you can write unit test discover, and then you need to give 2 flags, which is -s, which helps you to choose the directory in which the test cases are present. In this case, I'm telling that there is a directory called tests, and in the directory all the test cases are present. So I have specified that using the -s flag, and using the -p flag I am specifying the pattern of the file names of the test cases. All the test cases files are starting with the word test underscore and ending with .py. So this is the pattern of the file names which contains test cases in them. So let's try to use that to run test cases in these 2 files in the same folder. So let's try to write the command. I'm going to write python -m unit test, and the module is discover, and I'm going to write the folder path which is the same folder. So I'm going to write -s dot, and I'm going to give the pattern as -p test star .py, because all the test case files are starting with test and ending with .py. So this is the pattern of the file names that contains test cases in them. Let's try and click enter, and here you can see all the tests are running, and we have ran 4 tests because there are 2 tests in each test case. So this is how, using the discover command, you can run multiple unit tests together. Alright, let's see a practical folder structure where you can place tests. So I'm going to create a new folder. I'm going to write it src, where I'll write my Python source code, and let's try to create another folder. I'll just name it tests, and here I write the tests. Let's move these 2 Python files into this tests folder, and now I got all my tests in this test folder. And let's go to src folder, and let's try to create some dummy functions so that we can test them in our test files. So I'm going to create a new folder, and I'll write utils, and inside the utils folder I'm going to write a new file which is like math.py. Let's try to create a function called addition, and let's try to create another function called multiply. So I'm going to write def multiply, and it takes 2 numbers a and b, and it returns the multiplication. Alright, let's try to pretend these 2 functions are our application logic, and let's try to test them. So I'm going to create a file called testlogic.py, and let's try to test them. In test addition, let's try to use result equal to the function we just created. So first I have to import that. So I'm going to write from src.utils.math import addition, and let's try to test the multiplication also. So I'm going to write import multiply, and let's try to use these functions here. Result equal to addition of 1, 8, and let's try to test if the result is 9. This second line is redundant, and let's try to test multiply also. So I'm going to write result equal to multiply of 5 comma 7. So now I'm testing whether result is 35. So this is a very simple logic. I just wanted to show you what folder structure you can use while writing tests in your application logic. You can write all of your important application logic inside the source folder, something like src, and you can create a folder called tests, and in that you can group your tests as per your convenience and as per your application conventions, something like this. And inside the test files you can import your applications functions and test them, and once it's done you can test your test cases using the discover command. So let's try to use that again. Python -m unit test and use the command discover -s. Now the folder is tests, so I'm going to write /test, and the pattern is test star.py, so I'm going to write -p test star.py, and let's try to run it now. And now you can see all the tests are running. So let's try to fail a small test. I'm going to write result equal to 10. Now this test should fail. So let's try to run the command again, and now you got failure here in result equal to 10. And here you can even see the source code stack trace where the problem is. So it's telling test logic.py line number 11, and here there is a problem. All right, this is how you can group your tests and your source code so that it looks good and readable. This is how you can use unit tests to easily test your application logic in Python. Running the test from command line doesn't look intuitive or convenient. So Visual Studio Code has very awesome support for unit test module. You will get a nice user interface like this, and you can manually click the buttons to run the tests individually or groups of tests by clicking a single button. So let's try to enable the unit test support in Visual Studio Code very easily. Open your Python project in Visual Studio Code and then click Ctrl+Shift+P to open the command palette. And here just write tests, and here you can see configure tests. Click on the configure tests, and it's going to ask you some questions. What is the testing framework? I'm using unittest. And where are the tests residing in? My tests are inside the folder called tests. So I'm going to write tests and select the pattern to identify the test files. So I'm going to write test start.py because all my tests start with the word test. So I'm going to click this. And now testing support is enabled in Visual Studio Code, and you can see nice intuitive buttons are present in our test cases, and we can run each test individually. And there's a thing called Test Explorer also. You can see the Test Explorer symbol here. Just click on this and you can see all your test cases nicely grouped in a Test Explorer. You can run all the tests now. Let's try to click this. And here you can see there is an issue in this test case called test logic, and the problem is in this test addition. And here it is telling false is not true. And let's try to fix this. Result equal to 9. Let's try to run all the tests again. And now we are good and all our tests are passing. So using this Test Explorer in Visual Studio Code, you can easily run all the tests with the click of a single button. Alright, how did Visual Studio Code configure the testing framework for our application? Actually, there is no magic. You got a folder called .vs code, and in that there is a file called settings.json, and all the inputs you are given while using the command palette are recorded here. It's telling the testing framework is unittest. It has given the command line arguments -s, which is the source folder for the test, is ./test. That means all the test cases are inside the folder called tests, and it's giving the file name pattern as teststar.py, which you have entered while configuring the tests. So these options inside the settings.json have actually enabled the unit test support in Visual Studio Code. You can modify it manually here, or else you can again use Ctrl+Shift+P to open the command palette, write tests here, configure tests, and select the options as per your convenience and change the settings again. You can even right click on this tick button, and you can even run test or debug tests or reveal in Test Explorer. So from the source code itself of the test cases, you can actually run the tests. So this is how you can use Visual Studio Code's support for unit tests to intuitively run tests easily in a Test Explorer. So that's it guys. This is how you can run automated tests in Python using the unit test module. You can see I've created a blog post on how to use unit test module in Python to run tests. I've also given you the source code and examples so that you can copy paste and practice it in your own computer. We also talked about Visual Studio Code's awesome user interface for running unit tests in Python. I've also given you the references to the official documentation of the unit test module so that you can do further reading. Please ask questions or post your valuable feedback in the comments section. Hope you like this video guys. Thank you for watching. Peace.